boys and girls, and ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. This is Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things ready through a common sense lens. And man, oh man, am I cautiously optimistic about the future of Star Trek, ladies and gentlemen. And whether or not you've liked Kurtzman's Trek or not, whether you've loved it, whether you thought it was just okay, whether you absolutely hated it, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you cannot deny the fact that the ratings have been absolutely in the toilet. The majority of the audience has abandoned modern Star Trek, especially under the Kurtzman era and, of course, under Paramount. Well, obviously, a lot of that kind of stuff has changed out there. Skydance is now fully acquired and merged with Paramount to create a new company out there called Skydance Paramount. And the CEO, the new CEO out there, has been talking a lot about his priorities as well as the rest of his team. They've been kind of making the rounds with Hollywood, giving a lot of press conferences and letting them know how this new company would operate and what its priorities would be. Well, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we may end up indeed seeing Star Trek made great again, because apparently it's one of the top priorities over there at Skydance Paramount. And the best part about it is, boys and girls, they are doing it all in-house from here on out. Which, you know what that means? Kurtzman and his entire crew and all of the abominable psychopaths inside of that crew that have done all of the massive damage to Star Trek and turned it into the activist storytelling dumpster fire that it currently is, will be fired. Boys and girls, bye-bye. When your contract is over, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. Don't call us. We won't call you. Yes, it was you and not us. Bye-bye, because that's exactly what the CEO is saying, boys and girls. Because as you can see over here from the headline over there at cosmicbook.news, Star Trek is now a priority at Skydance-owned Paramount, boys and girls. And they're wanting to refurbish the Star Trek brand. And I'd imagine that means putting it back in its proper place. This isn't a reboot. This isn't a refresh. This is a refurbishment, boys and girls. And what do you do when you refurbish things? You restore them, right? Because you loved the original. You loved the source material. You loved that classic car. You loved that beautiful antique bookshelf. And what did you want to do? You loved it so much you were going to spend hours of your time out there going through it and looking at it and cleaning it up and polishing it and shining it and sanding it back down and cleaning up those little rough spots out there and putting a new engine in it and maybe rebuilding the old engine that's in it. And you change the tires and you get some new rubber on things and you repaint the outside. You sand it all down. You give it a nice new clear coat. That is refurbishment, boys and girls. Gone are the words about reimagining it in their own image or making it for a modern audience. No, boys and girls, if the rumor mill be true, these are two people, especially the new CEO, who has indeed a deep love for Star Trek and movie making and the movie process and movies specifically all around. And it looks like, boys and girls, it might be a bright new day for Paramount and especially the Star Trek brand out there, girls and boys. And I, for one, as a fan, am very happy to hear that. So we're going to take this article from cosmicbook.news, getting all the juicy details of exactly what the CEO said about the whole thing, as well as the rest of his team and what the future of Star Trek will indeed hold. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2,100. We're sailing our way towards 22. I think we're sitting at like 2,139, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Does this give you hope for the future of Star Trek? Did you love the Kurtzman era and you thought it was bringing a proper diversity that Star Trek had always been severely lacking, even though literally they had the first on-screen interracial kiss all the way back in the 60s? Or were you like the majority of the fan base that tuned out and did nothing but criticize this show, who could not understand how you couldn't get the simple formula of Star Trek proper and decided with another virtue signaling and activism kind of garbage? Let us know what you think about it in the comment section down below. As always, all opinions are welcome. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check the links in the description as well. All right, from our dear sweet Matt McGloin over there at cosmicbook.news, ladies and gentlemen. With Paramount merger now finalized, Skydance is making Star Trek great again. At least, let's hope so. Following years of subpar content, that's a very nice way to say disastrous dumpster fire trash garbage that insulted the memory and the original IP of all of Star Trek and completely and totally peed all over the fans while trying to tell them it was raining. Dana Goldberg, now co-chair of Paramount and chair of Paramount Television, made it clear Star Trek is a priority across the company. Boys and girls, Star Trek is a priority across the company. Now, would that be the case if they just wanted to keep on keeping along with Kurtzman Trek and the status quo and the way things have been? No, because they understand the disastrous state that the Star Trek IP currently finds itself in, and they know it has to be top priority for them to fix that and correct that. Because much like the merchandise sales have gone down for Marvel and Star Wars, the exact same thing has happened to Star Trek, and this is what happens when you make crappy television shows and crappy movies that do not respect the fan base and certainly don't respect Gene Roddenberry or what came before. So this is good to hear. This statement came during the new leadership's first press event in Los Angeles, following the studio's high-profile acquisition and reorganization, which included eliminating all of the diversity, inclusion, and equity offices and jobs, boys and girls, because as the Skydance CEO told us, we don't have DEI positions in our company. We just apply with all applicable state and government laws on not being discriminatory. So yeah, bye-bye, Kurtzman Trek. Notably, as a result of the merger and this event, the newly formed company's stock has surged nearly 50%. So that means it's now worth $20 a share. So if you bought it at $10 or $11 a share, which it was like the first couple of days it opened, you would have now already doubled your money. Man, I wish I had an extra 20 or 30 bucks back when this thing first went open. And plus, according to Robinhood, all the meme stalkers are having a great time with this too. And honestly, why wouldn't they? Because the meme stalkers are fans. And they're making fans very happy with all of the things they're saying. So we'll have to see if they can actually pull it off. We'll find out. We will indeed. We get word via Deadline about Skydance's Star Trek plans. David Ellison's Skydance has been involved with the franchise since Star Trek Into Darkness 2013, giving the company over a decade of financial and production ties to the brand. And obviously, Star Trek Into Darkness, we all got a few issues with those movies. But I mean, they're not exactly Star Trek, but they're fun, really fun action sci-fi movies. At least the first one was. I didn't see any after that, but still. We also take my opinion with a giant grain of salt. I liked Black Adam, boys and girls. Now, with Ellison as the CEO of the newly formed Paramount, a Skydance corporation, which Skydance says Star Trek will be in-house and under direct control. What does that mean? Bye-bye, Kurtzman. Take all your trash and garbage with you. This is a period in Star Trek we'll never, ever talk about ever again. And you guys thought Jar Jar Abrams did damage to the Star Trek brand. Boy, don't we miss those days. If that is indeed the case, that means Alex Kurtzman and his secret hideout production company are out when the contract expires next year, per the rumors. However, that is not what is not clear is whether Skydance's comments at the press event pertain to Star Trek movies alone, or if this also includes the streaming shows, which Kurtzman has been developing. But considering the fact that they said they're going to do all Star Trek in-house, then of course that's going to apply to the shows as well. And I know there's a Deadline article that breaks down a little bit more of some of the inner workings and some of the stuff that's going on outside of just what's going on with Star Trek. And they just recently hired one of Netflix's former CEOs to head of Paramount Plus's streaming services out there, right? And one of the questions asked to the new executives, I can't remember if it's a man or a woman, but asked of the new executive was, are you going to get enough money to be able to do what you need to do to make Paramount Plus, profitable and successful and all that kind of stuff? And it was literally like, yes, absolutely. So if that's the case, I'd imagine part of making Paramount Plus profitable and successful again is actually giving us a Star Trek show that Star Trek fans are actually going to want, engage with, and watch. I know, strange concept. But seriously, Ellison, call Terry Matalas, offer him heaven and earth if you have to. Just give him the keys to the kingdom when it comes to Star Trek and just let the kid do his thing. He's probably older than me, but still, just let the kid do his thing. And I promise you, you will find success. That is a fan, and he's the only one that has given you any good Star Trek in the last 10 to 20 years. So go hire Terry Matalas. I know Ellison will never see this video, but who knows? Maybe one of his employees will see it by accident for some reason and tell him that. Because come on, you guys know this. Terry Matalas, hire him. If that is indeed the case, it means, we already went over all that part as well. Deadline adds that Paramount will no longer share profits on major franchises like Star Trek, Top Gun, and Transformers, choosing to fully fund them in-house and cut out outside partners. What does that mean? This not only gives Skydance full creative control, but it also means Paramount intends to keep all of the potential financial gains or profits or losses from its big franchises. Again, not clear if this includes Star Trek streaming shows. Considering the fact that they're kind of including Star Trek as one giant whole thing, and there are some updates on that as well. In Hollywood's update on the presentation regarding Star Trek, their report says Star Trek will be looked at holistically rather than siloed off between different parts of the company, which means that Paramount plans to treat the entire Star Trek franchise as one unified brand across film, television, streaming, and other media, including comics, rather than handling each part separately, which is a genius idea. Whether or not it works out, all depends on whether or not they hired a genius or a moron to run that, right? Because that's what you need. You need one select creative vision, pushing things, guiding things, making sure everything falls in line, has like their little lore Bible, right? Your little continuity Bible to be able to do all that kind of stuff. You need that kind of thing, right? Versus having the Jar Jar Abrams universe in the thing versus like what the Kelvin time, they called it the Kelvin timeline or whatever it was, versus whatever this Kurtzman Trek abomination is, where even like the cartoon said some of the Discovery might not even be canon, you know what I mean? Which explains the weird Klingons and all of that kind of stuff out there. And so it's one of them situations where, but if that's going to be the case now, that means if they do movies, which according to the rumors that we'd heard and reported on early on, Ellison and his sister are both huge fans of the Star Trek motion picture movies, of the movies that actually came out there. There's even a comment in here, I think from Ellison, where he remembers going to him and his sister going to, he loves Hollywood, he loves studios, he loves all of this kind of stuff out here. He says he particularly remembers going out there and seeing all of this stuff as a kid. Restoring Paramount to the number one filmmaker in the land. Great films, yada, yada, yada. But he talks about in there at some point, one of these articles out there, he talks about how him and his sister used to go see the movies every single Sunday with his mother. He loved it. It's inspired him. This is something he dreamed about since a kid, being able to be involved with this kind of stuff. He spent 15 years trying to get a hold of a studio, and now he has one, and it's something that he loves as well. And so as Hollywood Reporter tweeted out here, yes, it's known the new Paramount will look to refurbish Star Trek, boys and girls. So that means they're now going to have it under one creative mind out there, movies and television shows included, which means no more Jar Jar Abrams Trek, right? That just means we're going to get like consistently traditional, regular old Star Trek continuity, which means the movies and the television shows will be involved with each other, right? So it'll be just like it was back in the 90s, boys and girls. You remember that glorious time for Trek? You remember all that wonderful stuff, with obviously Next Generation and Voyager and Deep Space Nine. I know not everybody liked Voyager, but Deep Space Nine was great, right? We can all agree with that one. But like literally, like you remember all that stuff? It was great. So that's what it sounds like that's exactly what they're trying to get back to. And if anything, boys and girls, that sounds exactly like trying to make Star Trek great again. Like I said, the real question is, do they know well enough to hire the right talent that can actually come in here and that will respect the lore? I'm hoping since they are fans themselves, they will make sure they only hire other fans that actually know and respect Star Trek and actually turn this ship around and make it profitable again. That would be a beautiful thing to see. So according to the reports, two Star Trek films are actively in the works. Original character film directed by Andor's Toby Haynes and written by Seth Grahame-Smith, with Simon Kinberg and Jar Jar Abrams producing. Whatever, Jar Jar Abrams producing. Not that big a deal. This version introduces new characters, a new crew, and a narrative direction. So we'll have to see how that goes. Obviously, these are strictly the reports. These are just the closest we have to official announcements right now. Kirk and Spock return. Another project reunites the classic ensemble, with Abrams producing again and Steve Yockey on script duties. Now, how they're going to do that with Kirk and Spock returning, I'm not entirely sure, unless they plan on doing it from the Jar Jar Abrams Kelvin timeline stuff. But I don't know if that's going to end up being the case or not on that one. So we'll have to wait for like official word coming from Paramount in the future, boys and girls. Josh Greenston and Dana Goldberg, now studio co-chairs, outlined a roadmap of 15 theatrical films per year with a near-term goal of 20. Star Trek sits alongside other top priorities like Top Gun 3 and A Quiet Place Part 3. This also confirmed a shift away from made-for-streaming movies like Section 31. Theatrical releases and major IPs are the studio's focus, with the goal to strategically scale the amount of content for our streaming services as well. So that's the thing. They understand, Skydance understands very well that making a movie and spending $200 or $300 million on a movie and then releasing to your streaming service is only guaranteed to be a financial disaster and be a flop. It is extremely hard for a streaming service to be profitable in the modern era that we see things in right now. That's why you see the addition of ads to every streaming service now, including Amazon Prime. That's why you see the raise in prices. That's why you got to pay 20, 30 bucks in some cases now to get all of these, to get ad free and all of that kind of stuff. You see bundle deals popping up left and right. You can bundle HBO Max with Hulu and Disney Plus, and you can get Paramount Plus included with your Walmart Plus subscription and like all of this kind of stuff, right? Because it's so hard to make streaming profitable. And one of the biggest mistakes you can make is spending, $600 million on an Andor Season 2 television show for 9 episodes. Yeah, those are massive mistakes. And clearly Skydance understands that, and they will not be making those same mistakes going forward. Movies belong in the theater, boys and girls. That's where they are meant to be. And in the modern era right now, considering how little money you make on streaming, I don't care if it's part 10, Jason Voorhees goes back to school. You better stick that in a theater and make what money you can off of it, because it's going to be far more profitable than sticking on your streaming service. And guess what? We got almost a decade of documented numbers and earnings calls to prove that. Anybody seen the real numbers behind Disney Plus lately? Under Kurtzman, Strange New World still has 2 seasons, and Academy is supposed to have 2 seasons. Rumor is that they started filming season 2 already. We'll see what happens with that. Needless to say, those are all over after those contracts are completed. So that would mean no new Star Trek shows under Skydance until 2027 at the earliest. And honestly, I think all of the fans are totally okay with that kind of thing out there as well. Strategically scale the content for so maybe that means more Star Trek shows, as it's known that various producers are pitching Skydance new ideas. So yeah, that's what we're going to get, boys and girls. Skydance plans, as said by their own team out there, is to refurbish Star Trek. What does that mean? They know the Star Trek brand is damaged and broken and busted. And you can blame Jar Jar Abrams all you want. He definitely started things and caused some issues, but at least you could argue that that's a different timeline, right? That was never the case with Kurtzman's Trek, right? They might have made a joke about it. They might have been serious about it. And Strange New Worlds, isn't that whatever the animated one is called. I don't know. I haven't paid attention enough to even bother remembering the names. I just pay attention to how bad their ratings are, right? Saying Discovery wasn't canon and yada, yada, yada nonsense like that. But at the end of the day, it was all very much placed right in the middle of Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek OG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. It was placed all right inside of that timeline. That was the point, right? And then all of a sudden they had this great genius idea of blowing up all the main source fuel in Star Trek, so that way the only crew out there really left to do anything was the diversity, inclusion, and equity crew out there. Yeah, that's the kind of genius writing we've getting from Star Trek, because it's apparently that's how all of this stuff works. Forget the fact that there's plenty other races out there that use things that obviously, besides what Starfleet uses to fuel their warp drives and their engine systems and all that kind of stuff. No, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't apply, because why? That would mean that the people currently responsible for the abomination that is Kurtzman Trek out there would have actually had to go back and watch the series. Would have actually had to go back and understood what came before them. But we know that's not what they do, right? Why? Because Kurtzman and the rest of his spirit of the age possessed activists out there use these IPs and use our beloved franchises for one thing and one thing only: to push their agenda, to push their stuff, to make sure that all of you Star Trek fans out there are educated on their diversity, inclusion, and equity. They want to make sure all of you bigots accept their race swaps, accept their girl bosses, and make sure you accept that gay people have to be constantly predominantly the best thing that ever happened to any episode of Star Trek ever. And then they'll throw musicals in on top of things. And then they'll mock and ridicule beloved characters like Captain Kirk and anything else they can turn into an absolute abomination. Well, fortunately enough for all of us out there, boys and girls, for obvious that are fans of fans or fans of Star Trek out there, rejoice. Because there is a new sheriff in town over there at Paramount. And Ellison is not taking any prisoners. He is getting rid of the garbage and he is prioritizing Star Trek for the refurbishment that it absolutely needs. And guess what, Kurtzman? Your time is over. And no one will remember you favorably. They will remember this as the dark times of Star Trek. And I think there's a lot of fans out there that are going to consider it completely and totally non-canon going forward, especially if Ellison can deliver on his promise and actually make Star Trek great again. Because at the end of the day, that's all fans want. It's not rocket science to make good Star Trek. It's really not. But at the end of the day, all that takes is you setting aside your own ego, narcissism, and your own personal activism, and your own personal politics, and your agenda, and actually giving fans what they want. Ellison and the rest of Skydance Paramount team are saying really good things. And we will find out if they're actually able to deliver. Because at the end of the day, they will get exactly what they deserve. But all I think all fans really want is for them to make Star Trek great again. So make the wise choice and make the fans happy. A big shout out to all of our subscribers and members out there. Thanks for watching, and make sure you guys like and subscribe if you have not already.